I'm proud of that. Unfortunately, in an instant, my life changed. That rope wrapped around my legs and lit my body completely on fire to my neck. Survival mode kicked in when I needed it most, and I jumped into the ocean to extinguish the flames, but not before about 25% of my body was severely burned. Will not make you stare at that for too long, but that gives you a sense. And since I was on a small island in rural Thailand, it was even worse because there was no proper hospital. So I had a moped ride down a dirt path to a one-room nursing station, which was much smaller than just this stage I'm standing on here. And I underwent 8 surgeries in this small makeshift hospital. And to make matters worse, there was a cat running around my bed and across my chest, sort of hammering home the fact that I was very, very far from home. And if the physical trauma wasn't bad enough, the emotional trauma was even worse, because this doctor came in, he looked me in the eyes, he said, "Colin, you will never walk again normally." 22 years old, I've been a lifelong athlete. It was a tough pill to swallow, to say the least. And so in that emotional and physical trauma, I was downward spiraling fast, alone on the other side of the world. Fortunately, there is a heroine to this story, which is this incredible woman right here, my mother. She arrived on the 4th or 5th day and really changed the course of my life. I can only imagine what it's like to be a mother and see your child in this state, completely helpless, nothing she can do to protect me. I know now that she was crying and pleading with the doctors in the hallway for any sort of good news. But instead, she didn't show me that fear. She didn't show me those tears. She came into my hospital room every single day with this smile on her face and an air of positivity, saying things to me like, "Colin, your life is not over," wrapping me in positivity, daring me to dream about the future. She said, "Colin, let's set a goal." And my first thought was, "Are you kidding me, Mom? My life as I know it is over. What are you talking about?" She just kept at me. So one day I played along, I closed my eyes, I opened them, I said, "Okay, Mom, I just pictured myself crossing the finish line of a triathlon. Not something I'd ever done before in my life." And instead of her looking down at my legs and going like, "I said set a goal, but maybe something more realistic, that doesn't seem, the best goal given the circumstance," she's like, "Great, let's start training." So literally the next day, much to the chagrin of this Thai doctor here, I said, "Doc, I'm training for a triathlon, bring me in some weights." You can see a look on his face like, someone knocked some sense into the stupid American kid who's never gonna walk again in his life. But I had it fixed in my mind, and my mother's just love and positivity continued to resonate. It was 3 months until I could get home. Flew back to Portland, Oregon, where I'm from. I hadn't even taken shout out to Portland. Back to Portland, Oregon, where I was from, and I still hadn't taken a single step. I was carried on and off the plane, and I was placed in a wheelchair when I got home. And that first day I woke up, I was in my mother's kitchen, sitting in my wheelchair, and she said to me, "Okay, Colin, now I know you've got this big triathlon goal, but today your goal is to take your very first step." She then grabbed this chair from our kitchen table and placed it 1 step in front of my wheelchair. She says, "You need to figure out how to get out of your wheelchair and take your first step into this chair in front of you." It took me 3 hours that day to work up the courage and strength to take that first step, but I did it. My first step on a long road to recovery. Now, I know that there's a lot of incredible mothers in this audience, so you can probably appreciate this, but my mom didn't stop there. The next day, she moved the chair 5 steps away. The next day, she moved the chair 10 steps away. Each day, urging me on to grow and get a little bit stronger, all the while imagining myself being an athlete again. This is me at 5 years old, diving in for my first swim race, and here I am as a collegiate swimmer, trying to get back into that mentality. Eventually, a year or so had gone by, and I wanted to get out of my parents' basement and get on with my life, so I took a job in finance and moved to Chicago. But I honored that goal, and I signed up for the Chicago Triathlon. Hey, we got some Chicago folks out there too, I love it. Well, as you'll see, Chicago plays a huge role in my life upcoming. So, about 18 months after being burned in the fire, I got to Chicago, I started training for the triathlon. That first day I was kind of shuffling around. I remember the first day I could jog. Jogging felt like flying. But ultimately, just after a year and a half after being burned, it was time for me to compete in the race. So I dove into Lake Michigan to begin the triathlon, swimming the first mile. Got on my bike and rode 25 miles down Lakeshore Drive, and then put my running shoes on and ran 6.2 miles to the finish. Crossing the finish line, I had achieved the goal that seemed impossible just a year and a half sooner. But there was one even larger surprise in store for me that day, which is when I finished, I actually hadn't just finished the race, but I had actually won, placing first out of about 4,000 participants on the day. certainly was an incredible moment in my life, but it wasn't a moment where I was like, I'm going to pat myself in the back. I'm some superhuman athlete. Immediately where my mind went was back to that Thai hospital wondering, what would have happened had my mom not forced me to set a measurable goal and look towards the future? And it was in that moment that I was like, I'm not special. I realized that every single one of us, we have these reservoirs of untapped potential inside of us to achieve extraordinary things. So with my curiosity piqued about what I could do next, I did the most obvious thing with a 24-year-old with a great job and a career in front of me. I went in and quit my day job on a Monday in finance and became a professional triathlete, which, by the way, is not lucrative at all. Certainly far less than many other professional sports. Meant more peanut butter jelly sandwiches, traveling around, but it gave me the opportunity to cultivate my passion inside of myself as an athlete and to see what my limits truly were. Ultimately, I raced for the U.S. national team in 25 countries and 6 different continents, lived all around the world, racing and training and pushing my body and developing my mental and physical strength. And then in the fall of 2014, I found myself here on a mountaintop in Ecuador with a diamond ring in my pocket, asking my longtime girlfriend Jenna to marry me. As you guys will quickly learn throughout the rest of this talk, Jenna is an absolute rock star, and she should really be standing up on the stage giving this speech because everything that happens next is really because of her. In this moment, her and I, thinking about the next chapter of our life, sort of awed and inspired by the mountains around us and dreaming about the future, we decided to set our next goal. Her and I are both big believers in this concept of growth mindset, which I imagine a lot of you are familiar with. Growth mindset, right? This idea that maybe we don't have the skills in this moment, but that doesn't stop us from daring to dream greatly. That we can grow and we can evolve in our mindset and our skills and our ability to reach the dreams that seem out of reach in the current moment. We love this quote, unless you try to do something beyond what you've already mastered, you will never grow. So what could we do? What was the biggest thing we could possibly think of? So me as an athlete, I still wanted to push myself in the most extreme way possible as an athlete. So I said, I want to set the world record for something called the Explorers Grand Slam. Now the Explorers Grand Slam is a mountaineering challenge that's been completed by only 50 people ever in history to climb the tallest mountain on each of the 7 continents, as well as complete expeditions to both the North and South Poles. That's expeditions to Everest, to Denali, Kilimanjaro, etc. But our larger purpose, what Jen and I really wanted to do, was turn this big goal into a huge media campaign so that we could start a nonprofit and have significant impact with young people. Kids today, as you probably know, are the least active in history. We got to get kids moving, inspired, engaged in their lives, and we wanted to do something to give back in this space. Super important to both Jen and I. But what happened? We got home from that mountaintop, we had this huge idea, we're going to set a world record, we're going to make sweeping impact with kids, it's going to be incredible. We get back to our small 1-bedroom apartment and realize this is all we have. A bunch of papers thrown around the ground, a whiteboard with our idea on it, and nothing else. No money, no background in marketing or sales, no idea how to get sponsors, no idea how to start a nonprofit. This is the moment that I know, because there's always entrepreneurs in this room, where 99% of ideas and innovation die. You get excited, you've got a big idea, it's going to be great, whatever, and then the reality hits you, boom, and your mind is flooded with doubt. Well, we're not really the right people to do this. We don't know enough people. To pull this project off, we're going to need $500,000 because the logistic complications to get all those locations around the world without stopping or taking any breaks is extraordinarily expensive, as well as to start a nonprofit and have sweeping impact. But we didn't stop there. We're like, okay, we don't know anything that we know how to do. We have these laptops in front of us. Okay, marketing, Google. What's the difference between marketing and PR? Google. How do you start a 501c3 nonprofit? That's literally where we started, at the very, very, very basics. We slowly built a website, came up with a concept and an idea, and then we went out to start asking our friends to introduce us to other people. We needed sponsors. First 100 people we asked, no. Next 100 people we asked, no. Oh, that's nice, but you've never climbed mountains. You're definitely never going to be able to do this. No, 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 no. Doors slamming in our face. But we didn't stop. We kept going. And one day, a friend of mine invited me to a spin class at a local gym. He said, hey, Colin, I want to introduce you to somebody. And I was kind of defeated a little bit, I'll admit, at that moment, and didn't know if it was going to work. He's like, come meet this woman. She's a world record holder herself. So I walk into a spin class. There's a woman, she's about 55 years old, and she had a world record in 5-kilometer running. He introduced me to her, and he said, tell her what you're doing. I said, well, I have this goal of setting this world record, have this impact with kids. And she's like, wow, that's really nice, cool, good luck with that. So So I get on my spin bike and I get through the class, get off, and she pulls me back over and says, "Hey, Colin, actually tell my husband this story. And you guys can appreciate this because I know you're out there pitching. You've got your own businesses. You're bringing in customers, right? And I had all of these no's. I had at least refined my pitch. I got it down to a concise 30-second pitch. And I didn't even realize I was pitching. She says, tell my husband the story. And so I rattle off my 30 seconds. I want to set this world record. It's going to be great. And the guy looks at me and he goes, I like this. I think the company that I work at might be able to do something around this. Why don't you send me an email on Monday? And I said, great. What's your email address? He goes, I'll get a card for you. He hands me his card. I look at it. Mark Parker, CEO, Nike Inc. It was a huge turning point for us, but it's a great reminder for anyone who's starting a business that even the things that seem like setbacks or failures in the process to building what you're building actually are teaching you the skills that you need in that moment when you are ready to succeed, when you are ready to break through. Ultimately, Nike came on as a big corner of our project, and it was finally time for me to leave on this expedition. First stop for me was Antarctica. This is my very first taste of Antarctica, and I'm going to bring you back here. But a tiny little plane dropped me off on the frozen continent. The landscape was desolate and surreal. It feels like standing inside the belly of a ping pong ball, just white in every single direction. And it's freezing cold. So the average temperature in Antarctica is about minus 30 degrees. It's hard to kind of wrap our minds around that, but the best way I can describe it is I took a cup of boiling water and threw it into the air, and it immediately turns into ice. Boiling water to ice in a second. And you can imagine what it's like to be pulling a sled day by day out there. Ultimately arriving to the South Pole, and a couple other guys who joined me on this leg of the journey. And then from there, I had to continue onwards. You'll see this as day one here, because this means I'm now on the world record clock. And so the time is ticking, so the time it's going to take me to climb all the next mountains, including the travel time, are adding up towards this world record that I'm hoping to break. So without any breaks in between, I immediately went and climbed the tallest mountain in Antarctica, and the tallest in South America, Aconcagua, then Kilimanjaro in Africa. No breaks in between other than Jenna just running the logistics and our entire campaign in the background, figuring out how to get me from place to place and keep the momentum going. After 100 days of nonstop climbing, I finally found myself here at the base of Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. That in itself is a pretty intimidating scene when you're standing there at the bottom looking up at the tallest point in the world. It seems unfathomable that a human being can get all the way up that high. But of course, determined to keep trying, with just 2 mountains left to hopefully set this world record, I set off. We think about getting to the summit of a mountain and how epic that can be, but the bottom of Mount Everest is equally as challenging and equally dangerous. This is me taking my first steps climbing up the mountain. This is a GoPro strapped to my chest as I'm walking across cavernous crevasse. It's probably about 200-300 foot drop off into an icy hole down there. Obviously careful with each and every step. Woo! Thrilled to get to the other side, of course.
Oh my goodness.
Now on Mount Everest, you start at base camp, but there's 4 camps higher, so you slowly go from camp to camp to camp, reaching higher on the mountain until you eventually get to what's called Camp 4, which is right here, which is also known as the Death Zone. An altitude of 26,000 feet, above which the human body, even with supplemental oxygen, is slowly dying. Have people read the book Into Thin Air? Anybody out there? Yeah, I see a few hands. Excellent. There's a book, Into Thin Air, that was written about an Everest climbing disaster in 1996 where 8 people lost their life, and this is the exact place where that happened. And so as I got up there, and all of a sudden the weather shifted, to 50, 60 mile per hour winds, it took me about 2 hours to set up my tent and get inside. It was a very dangerous and challenging time in my life. Should I give up? I was climbing not with a big guiding team or anything like that, just myself and a Sherpa by the name of Pasang Bodhi. We decided we actually had to climb back down the mountain to avoid the storm and regroup. But I didn't give up in that moment. We found another weather window a few days later and decided to go for the summit. And when you're climbing up Mount Everest in the summit, there's so little oxygen that you're taking, 1 step, 5 breaths. 1 step, 5 breaths. And it's very narrow. It drops off about 5,000 feet on either side. You're slowly making your way towards the summit. That's Pasang Bodhi, my climbing partner there, a few other climbers up in front of us approaching the summit. they're right there, about 26,000 feet. It's almost like two of the Colorado Rockies stacked on top of each other. But nearing the summit, I'm looking down from that peak. And then just a few minutes later, battling through the night after this long expedition, 120 days now, or 100, almost 30 days now, in this epic journey that I've been on, I reached this moment. I'm on the summit of Mount Everest! Top of the world! No words can describe. Certainly a very exciting moment for me. It meant that I completed 8 of the 9 expeditions to break the Explorers Grand Slam world record, and I had just 1 mountain remaining. But any good mountaineer will tell you that the summit of any mountain is actually only halfway. About 80% of climbing accidents actually happen on the descent, and unfortunately, this night would be no different. I was able to get down to my camp in Camp 4 safely, but 3 people would lose their lives descending the mountain that day. Not anyone who I knew, but I would find out later. But as I slowly crawl my way back into camp, still in the death zone at Camp 4, I get inside my tent completely exhausted. It takes me an hour to unzip my boots, get inside my tent, get inside my sleeping bag, and I pick up my satellite phone to call home to Jenna, who of course is running this entire campaign in the background. And she's like, "Did you make it?" And I said, "I made it to the summit, babe." She's like, "Oh, congratulations. How are you feeling?" I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm just going to rest here for a while, slowly make my way back down. I'm 2 months ahead of the world record pace, so hopefully we can get the last one and it'll be good. She was like, "But no injuries?" I said, "No." She then said something that I will never forget. She says to me, she goes, "Well, in that case, Colin, I need you to put your boots back on." What? She's like, "Yeah, so we've been doing some calculating, and it just happens if you can get to the summit of Denali, your final peak, in the next week, you can set not 1, but 2 world records. But here's what I need you to do. Put your boots back on right now. Climb all the way back down to base camp. I've arranged for a helicopter to pick you up and take you to Kathmandu. No time to spend overnight in a hotel or shower, but an evening flight will take you from Dubai to Seattle to Anchorage. And then you'll have 3 days to climb Denali. I know it normally takes a month, but if you can do all that, you can set 2 world records, right?" You're getting a sense of Jenna now. She's incredible. In that moment, I was forced to wipe the slate clean. I had no idea if we could pull off Jenna's crazy plan. It seemed absolutely outside of the possibility. However, I am a big believer, and this is one of my all-time favorite quotes, which is, "He who says he can and he who says he can't are both usually right." And it was a moment where I could decide. I was like, her crazy plan, I don't know all the different things, the helicopter will meet up, and I was like, but I can at least put my boots back on and begin this journey. So after taking no rest coming down from Everest, I put those boots back on, and just 100 hours after standing on the summit of Mount Everest, I found myself on the complete other side of the world, climbing up Denali in Alaska, my final summit. Now the next 3 days, like I said, it normally takes about a month to climb Denali, but I had 3 days to do it. I could give a whole other speech on how challenging those 3 days were. I've been out there for 139 days consecutively since the beginning of the South Pole. Battled an incredible storm to get up Denali, but on the afternoon of May 27, 2016, I stood on the summit of Denali, setting 2 new world records. An incredible moment for me, and an incredible moment to reflect on the totality of the journey. My mother, the chair, encouraging me to get up when I was down many years before this. All the people who had said no to us when we tried to build and execute our vision, and the eventual breakthrough that we had to get there, and the setbacks we had to overcome along the way, breaking through those limits and those boundaries of what people thought we couldn't do. And when I got back home, Jenna had turned our initial Google searching into something incredible, something with 500 million earned media impressions. And I don't show that because I care about having my name in the newspaper or on TV. It's what allowed us to actually plan the bigger part of our vision, which was to have a significant platform to drive impact, to go talk to kids all around the country and in person and digitally interacting with millions of kids through curriculums we built. That's actually Jenna over there in the black jacket. And it was amazing to have that impact and be able to build what we really wanted to build, our vision. And while I was out climbing Mount Everest and we were connecting with kids digitally and in classrooms, Jenna started asking students this one simple question, which is, what's your Everest? It's somewhat of an obvious question. It's an obvious metaphor, right? For these kids, what's your Everest? What's a big, audacious goal that you have in your life that maybe seems a little bit out of reach? And kids are incredible because life hasn't necessarily knocked them down yet. And so I ask a room full of kids, a gymnasium full of kids, and I get 500 hands in the air, and they say things to me like, Colin, my Mount Everest is to be the first person in my family to graduate from college. Or, my Mount Everest is to make sure the snow leopards are off the endangered species list. Or whatever amazing things kids dare to dream. I've heard thousands of responses to that question. But as I run around talking to students, I started to realize that question, what's your Everest, is not just important for kids, but it's actually important for any person of any age. Every single person in this room, no matter where we are, we have a goal. We have something unrealized that we want to reach for, that we want to attain in our life, that maybe we're a little bit too afraid to take action towards. And after everything, I realized that question was super important for me to ask myself in this moment. Colin, what is your next Everest? I literally climbed Mount Everest, but what am I going to do? Just kick my feet up and do nothing with the rest of my life? And it was also in this moment that I started to redefine how I thought of myself. I'd always thought of myself as an athlete, but I actually began to start thinking myself as an artist. And that these projects that Jen and I were putting out into the world were our own creative expressions that had ripple effects of positivity and impact throughout the world. And so in the format of a true artist, I didn't want to just repeat what someone had done before or break another record. I wanted to do something completely unique, something that had never been done. And in the expedition world, which is my campus for my expression, there was a world first that I had my eyes on, something that no one in history had ever been able to complete, which is a solo, unsupported, and unaided crossing of the entire continent of Antarctica, coast to coast, via the South Pole. Now, solo, of course, means being out in Antarctica completely by yourself. Unsupported means no resupplies of food or fuel, so I'm going to have a sled behind me with 375 pounds, almost all full of food and fuel, so I hopefully don't run out that I have to drag. And then unaided means no use of kites or dogs or vehicles, so it's kind of mano-a-mano, dragging this sled across the entirety of Antarctica. Now, this is not just some crazy idea that Jen and I came up with. This has actually been attempted and tried for well over 100 years at this point, going all the way back to a name probably many of you recognize from the history books, Ernest Shackleton, a British explorer who was one of the first people to really explore Antarctica. He said humans should cross the continent of Antarctica, and he made an attempt way back in 1914 that was unsuccessful, but he opened the doors for people trying. And after 100 more years, still no human had completed this. Of course, we created planes and people have crossed on various different ways with teams and dog sleds and all sorts of things, but no one still had done it in this purest form until Henry Worsley, another British explorer, attempted the crossing in 2015. Now, Henry Worsley made it about 900 miles across this 1,000-mile crossing, just 100 miles from the finish in 71 days of trying. And unfortunately, he fell ill and ultimately died in his attempt, being unsuccessful. Very tragic for the entire expedition world. And then a couple years later, a guy by the name of Ben Saunders, one of the strongest, most fit, accomplished, again, another British, attempted this crossing, and everyone in the world said, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Ben Saunders. He's the most prepared to do it after all these history of people trying. And he made it 54 days into the journey and ran low on food and supplies, and he actually had to be picked up and rescued before he ran out of food. So he was again unsuccessful. And after all these unsuccessful attempts, people in the media that follow this started saying, you know what, that Antarctica crossing, it's impossible. It's never going to be done. Wired magazine writes, it is straight up impossible to take enough calories with you to get across the continent of Antarctica. In this moment, as I've been thinking about this project and I'm reading these news clips, I'm going, is it really impossible? Maybe. But Jen and I have realized that when we try and strive for things outside of our comfort zone, outside of our reach, of that seemingly are impossible, even if we fail, we know we're going to grow along the way in the process of daring to dream greatly. So we decide to plan and go for it. And we call our project The Impossible First. Not as some cocky way of saying, oh God, people say it's impossible and I can do it, but actually acknowledging this might be impossible, but we are willing to step so far beyond our limits, so far beyond our comfort zone to at least attempt it. So again, Jen and I spent a year or so planning this project, getting the support we needed for it, rallying people around it, building school curriculums with our nonprofit to integrate around Antarctica and weather and climate and all these things to have the school kids engaged. And as I'm getting ready to leave, to depart, which was November of last year, we find out that there's another explorer who's going to be attempting the project at the exact same time. Meet Captain Lou Rudd. Now, when I say the same time, I literally mean there's one guy with one plane that can drop you off on the edge of Antarctica where you need to be dropped off. There's only one season that this can be done. So when I say the same time, I mean me and this very intimidating man, Captain Lou Rudd of the British military, are on a tiny little cargo plane sitting right next to each other, flying to the edge of Antarctica to compete in a 1,000-mile historic race across the entire continent. And you can see here from his quote, he's not too thrilled about the fact that I'm attempting it because he thinks it's very important that a Brit cracks this journey first. And so he goes on and tells me about all of his military experience. You know, I've been in the military longer than you've been alive. 33 years military experience. Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm very decorated as an honorable military man, someone who I actually very much look up to, and who has actually pulled a sled further than any living explorer in Antarctica. He's already crossed about 2,500 miles on various expeditions, so he's extremely experienced, and he's looking over at me in this sled, just going like, this kid has no chance at all. But finally, this plane lands and it drops us off just 1 mile equidistance from each other to begin this journey 1,000 miles across the continent. Here I am in this moment, starting my journey with Lou, dropped off about a mile away.
I'm about to be all alone out here. The journey begins. I'm feeling really excited. It's calm, blue sky, no wind right now, so I guess I couldn't have asked for a better day to start.
I always laugh when I look at that video. It's minus 25 outside. I'm all like excited, like, yes, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be so fun. And I reach down, and like I said, my sled is full of 375 pounds of food and fuel and the gear that I need. And I reach down to my sled there and I pull the straps tight for the very first time. And the first time I pull it tight, the plastic strap, ping, broken. I haven't even taken a single step, and things are already breaking on my sled. This is gonna be a long journey. And here I am, just 3 hours into the journey right after that.
Oh my gosh. That's more than I ever dreamed possible. Only 3 hours into the journey, and I'm already having so many doubts. It's just so heavy.
Not exactly the start I was looking for. Turns out that's a very heavy amount of weight to pull. If you look closely on this image here, you can see that there's frost on the tip of my nose. Why is that? Well, it turns out when you start crying into the goggles when it's minus 25 degrees, that the tears actually begin to freeze to your face. Overall, a pretty pathetic feeling when you just told the whole world that you're going to do this incredible thing. And to make matters even worse, if it couldn't get any worse, what do I see on the horizon? I see Captain Lou just, strong and steady, just disappearing on the horizon, gone. Turns out maybe he did know a little bit better than I did. So you might see a theme here, thinking of the only thing I could possibly do in this moment. I reach for my satellite phone and I call home to Jenna. She of course knows the entire route and is wondering, why am I calling her so soon into the first day? I said, hey babe, I think we may have named our project the right thing. It appears that it is impossible. She's like, what? We've been going for like 2 hours. She's like, okay. How far are you from the first waypoint, is what she asked me. So I have a GPS that marks the waypoints, along the route. She knows the first waypoint is pretty near, and I said to her, Jenna, the first waypoint is something like, 0.54 miles away, as if it were 1,000,000 miles. She's like, okay, so it's a half a mile in front of you. Take a deep breath, do me a favor. Strap into your sled and pull your sled at least to the first waypoint. Forget about Captain Luke. Forget about any of this. This is about you taking care of yourself now. Get to that first waypoint. It'll feel like some incremental process, like you've at least made it somewhere. So sure enough, as I always try to do, I listen to Jenna, I strap back into the sled, and I get to my first camp, setting up camp that night. As I'm going to bed, she reminds me, I had been talking to her about meditation and these flow states. I was getting a calm in my mind. I actually deleted almost all of my content off my phone so I could spend time in deep silence, which may have been a bad idea at this point. And she says to me, try to find that flow, try to find that calm and peace in your mind over the next couple of days. And I'm thinking to her, like, you're absolutely crazy. I don't know what I was thinking back there in my warm house when that seemed like a good idea. But sure enough, I go to sleep. I wake up the following morning and I realize this is going to be exceptionally hard. And I'm a big fan of mantras. I'm a big fan of we are the stories that we tell ourselves. But I've never said this to myself ever before, but I'm like, I need a pep talk. And here I am, alone in Antarctica, in this tent, completely by myself, and I sit upright out of bed when my 6 a.m. alarm goes off and I go, Colin, you are strong, you are capable. You are strong, you are capable. I don't probably believe the words I'm saying to myself, but I gotta give myself some sort of pump-up speech to get myself going to pull this sled day after day after day. The next 5 days were exceptionally hard, a lot more tears inside of the goggles. I'm not sure I found the flow more than about maybe 30 seconds here and there, but at most it was just complete struggle and pain and hardship. But I kept going, one step at a time. And then on the 6th day of the journey, to my complete and utter surprise, I found this on the horizon, which was another tent. Now I was pretty sure there was nobody else just wandering out in the middle of Antarctica by themselves, and that I had drawn even and found Captain Lou's tent. I couldn't believe it. And it was a whiteout day, as you can see here. And so I wanted to see if I could maybe sneak past it. I don't know. So I've got my sled, but I'm moving pretty slowly, obviously. I'm sliding past. I go kind of near his tent. And as I pull up beside his tent, I hear this cough and this unzipping. And this head emerges. He starts kind of waving at me as if he's like the Queen of England or something like this. And I'm like, what am I going to do? It's just a bizarre encounter, but, I just wave back, like, hey, like, no big deal, just walking along. So I try to mind my own business, but in a whiteout in Antarctica, you pretty much can't see at all where you're going. So it's white on white. Imagine if we closed our eyes or walked down a dark hallway, you're quickly going to slam into the wall, because as humans, we're not, used to picking up without any visual cues how to walk in a straight line. So the only way to keep going sort of straight is to have my compass strapped to my chest. And so I've got my compass strapped to my chest, but it's much more slow going in this whiteout where it's just white on white. It's 24 hours of daylight in Antarctica, the sun never sets, just continuous white, and I'm just looking down this compass for hour after hour, and I'm kind of swerving, moving really slow around as I'm trying to make my way. And after about 2 hours, I finally look back behind me. I look back behind me, what do I see? Captain Lou. No compass out, going straight in my tracks, using me as the way to find the way. The wily polar veteran perhaps waited in his tent and knew I was passing him, to that little trick up his sleeve to let me do the hard work and navigating. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited for a second that I had passed him, but it looks like he had actually had the last laugh. So finally I slow down, and eventually he pulls up beside me. And he's like, hey, good morning, mate. And I'm like, he's like, I got a bit of a suggestion for you. And I'm thinking, like, what is this guy going to say to me out here? He's just messing with me still. And so before he says another word, I cut him short. I go, Lou, I'm going to stop you right there. We both know the score, and we both know the stakes out here. We're both attempting to be first. Henry Worsley, the guy who had died, was his dear friend from the military, so we both knew the intensity of the stakes and how dangerous what we were doing was. And I said, well, we're supposed to be out here solo, unsupported, and unaided. So let this be the last time that we speak to each other. And he kind of lifts up his ski goggles. It feels like he's peering deeply into my soul with his intimidating look. But he just kind of says to me, fine, suit yourself. Off we go. And here I am in the moment trying to sort of unpack this very strange encounter that I just had in the middle of Antarctica. I just walked up. Something super interesting just happened. Lou just walked up to me. You can kind of see him in the back of the frame there. So when you decide to split up and you're both pulling 300 pest plants, it's like, hey, see you later, and then you're both still standing like right next to each other because you can't really go very fast. It's a very awkward situation of trying to pretend like we're both not there. But I get into my mind that day, I'm like, okay, he might be more experienced, he might be more prepared. His sled is obviously lighter because he was more strategic about what he brought. But I think I can stay out here longer than him. And so I decide in my mind, I am not stopping until 1 hour after he stops. If he goes for 9 hours a day, I'm going to go for 10. If he goes for 10 hours a day, I'm going to go for 11. And sure enough, after the 11th hour, I look over and I see him get down in his sled and he pulls out his tent. I'm exhausted and stumbling around at that point, but I pretend like I'm not, and I continue on for 1 more hour, completing 12 hours that day and taking my first true lead in this historic race across Antarctica, finishing about 2 miles ahead of him that day. But it's only day 6, and I realize if I'm going to make it across the continent without running out of food, as well as stay ahead of Lou, then I need to get up earlier every morning, and I need to go no matter what the conditions are. No off days that I'm going to be able to have this entire time. So if the wind is blowing like this in my face, it doesn't matter. I have to keep pulling my sled. Now, I've talked a lot about pulling my sled, but there's a lot of other things that go into Antarctica being alone. I've got to set up my tent myself. I have to shovel snow to protect my tent in the high winds. I have to deal with all the gear inside of my sled, and then I get inside my sled every single day and start the process of taking snow, putting it on my snow, melting it for water, making sure my clothes and gear are all taken care of. Many, many, many steps. There's about 5 hours of work total on either side of the day. So 12 hours of pulling a sled, 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours at night. It's about 17-hour days non-stop. I've got this tiny little satellite modem that I'm sending Instagram posts to. It takes about an hour to upload one grainy low-res image, but I can get something out with a caption so that students following along can see my daily progress and updates. Now, a lot of people think of Antarctica as this sort of flat, desolate, white landscape. It's definitely desolate, it's definitely white, but it's absolutely not flat. The South Pole is actually at 9,310 feet, and I was starting at sea level. So I'm actually pulling my sled uphill every single day to get there. And then a word that many of you probably have never heard before is a word called sastrugi, which is what's pictured here. Is there's so much wind and intense weather there that actually the snow gets carved into these speed bumps. So I'm pulling the sled uphill over these endless fields of sastrugi speed bumps, trying to make my way day by day. I remember I took this photo, it was on the 16th day. I had been in silence this entire time, but I finally was like, you know what? I brought 5 musical albums with me. It's time. I need to listen to a little bit of music to get myself going. One of my favorite all-time albums is Paul Simon's Graceland. So I put that on. Yeah, Graceland? We got some Graceland fans out there? Put on Paul Simon, played it on repeat throughout the entire day. You get silly when you're alone for that long. I'm like doing a little solo dance party out there and I actually post about it to the Instagram. The school kids have no idea who Paul Simon is, of course, but I give him a little shout out on there. But this is what it looked like on a beautiful sunny day, the days when I mostly took photos. But this is actually not what it typically looked like. A typical day actually looked a lot more like this. Blowing so hard I could barely walk towards my camera. So it's about minus 30 degrees ambient temperature, but when the winds are like this, 50, 60 mile per hour winds, that makes for wind chill of about minus 80 degrees. So this was my typical day. And as I told you, I didn't have a lot of extra gear with me. I needed to bring as much food and fuel as I could bring. I'm not proud of this fact, but that meant that I literally didn't even bring an extra pair of underwear with me. I had no extra pair of change of clothes throughout the entire journey, but it certainly meant that I couldn't have an extra tent or a backup. So you can imagine, 50, 60 mile per hour winds, I'm setting up my tent. If I don't tie a knot correctly or if I let go, boom, tent gone, and I'm alone in Antarctica with no shelter, no hope of rescue. So the intensity and the focus required every single day was really intense. As you can see here, it starts to wear on me and my face. Even though I was wearing a full face mask almost the entire time, little bits of wind started piercing my face mask and started getting frostbite on my cheeks and my nose. And you'll start to see in the rest of the images, I've got black tape across my face to try to make that so it doesn't get any worse. And every single day as I'm going along, I'm breathing out. You can see the condensation of my breath is actually forming deep sort of ice beard crystals across the bottom of my face and mask, and it would be covered in ice by the end of the day. So getting in my tent at night, I had to come up with creative ways in this cold and desolate place to try to warm and melt my gear so that it would be dry enough to begin the next day. And here I am trying to figure that out.
I have to sleep with all the stuff in my sleeping bag to keep it warm at night, like my socks and my gloves. But last night, I also slept with my ski in my sleeping bag. My ski in the sleeping bag because I'm trying to get to skate the stick, so that's the glamorous life here. No people, but nice sharp ski to snuggle up to.
I may have been going crazy a little bit by that point. In 27 days, I went by myself. And the skins there on the bottom of my ski, that's actually what gives me traction when I keep going forward. And they're starting to pull off because it's so cold, and I'm trying to get them to stay stuck down, otherwise I can't make any progress. So, curling up next to my skis at night, putting everything down my sleeping bag to try to warm it up, it's getting pretty grim, to say the least. On day 35, I finally found myself here, another beautiful sunny day, but I'm exhausted. I'm at 9,000 feet now on the polar plateau, about 5 days away from the South Pole. And Jen and I do a phone call every single night of like a medical checkup just to make sure that everything's going right. She's kind of checking a few things over and a checklist. And she says, how you feeling? I'm like, I'm so tired. I can't wait to hang up this phone and go to sleep. I was only getting about 5 or 6 hours a night of sleep in this 24 hours of daylight until I started my 17-hour day again. And she goes, well, before you go to bed tonight, I actually need you to do one more thing. I need you to call this phone number. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're the only person I talk to. Like, what are you saying? She's like, trust me, just call this number. And so I'm confused and I'm so upset, I'm tired. I just dial this random phone number. It rings off my satellite phone. It's all, scratching connection. Like, hello. This guy answers the phone. Hi, this is Colin from Antarctica. And the guy's like, oh, great. Yeah, I've been expecting your call. This is Paul Simon. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely hallucinating now. There's absolutely 0% chance that I'm in the middle of Antarctica talking to my satellite phone to Paul Simon. But it turns out that he had seen the Instagram post. The New York Times had written about the fact I was listening to his music, and he had reached out to Jenna to see if he could talk to me to give me some encouraging words to make my crossing. Which was amazing, and what do you talk to Paul Simon about? I start telling him I love Graceland, and he starts telling me about his entire creative process of how he went to South Africa to record the drums of that album. And when you don't talk to anybody for 35 days, one little conversation like that, particularly from someone who's a hero of yours, gives you enough fuel and energy and something to think about for many more days, enough energy for me to get myself to my next waypoint, which is, of course, the South Pole. On my 40th day, I arrived here to the South Pole. You'll see here there's some buildings in the background. It's the one place in Antarctica on the interior where there's anything, and that's because there's a scientific research base there. But if I were to go inside one of these buildings, or one of the scientists were to walk out and hand me a cookie or a cup of coffee, that would completely nullify my solo, unaided, unsupported crossing. And so after 40 days of getting to the South Pole, the end point for almost any expedition that's taken place in Antarctica, I only spent 30 minutes at the pole, take a few quick photos, and continue on my way. But I'm a big believer that we should certainly celebrate the incremental processes, the incremental steps along the way. Celebrating that first step as I got out of that wheelchair. Here I am, I'm at the South Pole. Only 23 people in history had ever crossed solo unsupported from any coast to reach the pole. And at the very least, I had done that, even though my finish line was the other side of the continent, hopefully. And it was a beautiful day, calm day. This is called a parahelix or a sundog. A circular rainbow appears, and it's completely dead calm. And I sat there and kind of just drank in the moment, proud of what I had at least accomplished. Little did I know that this calm was the last and final calm before a massive storm. The next day, an 8-day storm blew in that was even more violent than what I just showed you in that setting up the tent video. 60, 70 mile per hour winds. At this point, I'm running out of food, and so my hips and my ribs are beginning to protrude. I'm getting very weak and beat down. I'm worried I'm not going to make it, and certainly if I take a rest day to wait out this storm, I'm going to run out of supplies. Lou might overtake me again, and so I have to get out there and treat it like every normal day. 12-hour days in this relentless and endless storm. On the 48th day, I'm about an hour into my day trying to pull hard against this intense headwind, and all that sastrugi is built up. There's so much snow blowing around that I can't see where I'm going, so I'm tripping and I'm falling, 5 times, 10 times. I'm afraid that I'm going to break an arm or hit my head on something, but I keep going. I finally get up over this big sastrugi, and I don't see it, but there's about a 4-foot hole on the other side, that I come crashing down. When I come crashing down, my leg is trapped, and I'm seeing my several hundred-pound sled teetering above me. If that falls down and hits my leg, broken ski binding, I'm an inch from failure in that moment. And those skins that I showed you in my tent that I'm trying to keep on actually were ripped off the bottom of my skis because the fall had been so bad. And I had no choice but to get in my tent, try to make the repair, and assess the damage. And here I am in that moment.
Day 48. It's the first time in the project I'm feeling like I just wish I could quit. I'm doing it.
Certainly an incredibly low moment in my life, and I'm reminded of the fact that an explorer had made it 100 miles from the finish line and ultimately fell ill and died. I'm reminded that people had said, this is impossible. But I'm also reminded of one of my favorite allegories from a book, The Alchemist. We got some people who have read The Alchemist out there. If you haven't, highly recommend. Just write that down and read it in a day. There's an allegory in that book that says, we often die of thirst when crossing the desert just a few moments before seeing the palm trees on the horizon. I talked about before that moment of Jen and I with the whiteboard, where 99% of innovations and ideas die because of our doubts. But we actually took that 1% and actually took that and made an idea into action. But even though we took the action, here's this inevitable piece, this inevitable sort of brick wall in the road saying, you know what, I tried, but maybe it's time to give up. It's too hard. I don't know if I can go on anymore. But for my meditation practice, I'm always a big fan of this other mantra, which is, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. This reminder that if you can keep getting out and battling through the storm, no matter what low moment, whatever low moment of doubt or fear that you're going through, you can get beyond that. You can break through your perceived limits and keep going. And that's what I did, somehow managing the courage and strength to get back out in that storm and to keep battling, knowing that if I can keep doing that, that this too shall pass. And on Christmas morning, my 53rd day on the ice, I awoke to finally my first calm day in well over a week. And as I wake up, I strap into the sled, I start to realize that I'm only 77 miles away from the finish, closer than any human had ever been to completing this historic crossing. And something felt completely different to me that day. As I strapped into my sled and I started pulling, my mind had all of a sudden focused and become dead calm. That flow state that I've been so curious about at the beginning of this, the reason I deleted all of my content, I finally found a place inside of myself. Although my body is more weak than it's ever been, skeletal bones sticking out, I found a place inside my mind that was calm and confident. I started doing math. I was like, okay, 77 miles. My average mileage has been somewhere around 15 or so miles, a little bit faster when I've had a lighter sled towards the end, maybe 20 miles. So what if it's 3 or 4 days of pushing and I can get to the end? I started thinking 3 or 4 days of pushing. Well, how many more hours do I have pulling my sled then? I go, I kind of estimate, maybe it's 40 hours if I push really hard to get to the end. I think 40 hours. Well, that's hours. That's not days or weeks or months. The sun never sets here. What if I don't stop? What if I just keep going all the way till the end? And so I decided in that moment that I'm not going to set up my tent a single other time until I get to the very end of this journey. So I go for 5 hours. I go for 10 hours. I go for 15 hours. Further than I've ever gone in a single day. It's Christmas Day back home. I go 20 hours. After 20 hours, a huge storm kicks up. One of the worst I've ever seen. It's called a ground blizzard. When the wind kicks up and there's loose and unconsolidated snow, and the snow starts blowing around everywhere. It's like being inside of a blender or a shaken snow globe. But even though this storm is kicked up, one of the worst that I've ever seen, I'm still completely calm in my mind. This storm can't touch me where it truly matters. The fear's no longer there. The doubt's no longer there. 20 hours, 25 hours, 30 hours. I still haven't slept and I've kept going. I've got a live tracking beacon out into the world that my family and friends can follow along. It's Christmas Day and they're all gathered and they're wondering, he hasn't stopped. But he's still going. He looks strong. 30 hours, 31 hours, 32 hours. After 32 hours, I finally spot on the horizon this post the U.S. Geological Survey has pounded in at the edge of the Antarctica continent in the beginning of the Ross Ice Shelf. And I realize that I'm about a quarter mile away from completing this crossing. Of course, I'm dying to get to the finish line. I'm exhausted. I haven't slept now in 32 some hours. I'm completely out of food at this point. I'm on sort of my last bites of food for the day. Very low supplies in my sled overall. And I want to go touch the post, but instead I sit down for a moment and think again about the journey. This isn't just my journey. This journey is representative of my mother's love, of Jenna's love, of the people who have rallied around us and supported us. I know there's a community of folks here. I'm a big believer we're the net product of the 5 or 10 people we spend the most time around. And this, expression of my creativity is a result of all of that. Also a result of all the hardships, the things and the lessons that I've learned along the way. Not just my successes, but more than anything, the failures that I've overcome in my own mind, in my own body, to get to this point. And finally, I get up and walk the last quarter mile and touch the post. run that video from the top because I think you guys will appreciate it.
The vision is great history. I feel like I have so much more to say, but I'm just so drained. I'm so tired.
Not my most articulate acceptance speech. But lucky for me, in that moment, no one else was there to see that, so I got to have my moment to myself. But of course, I picked up my satellite phone. I called home to Jenna and my family, who were all gathered on Christmas, the day after Christmas at this point. Tears of joy flooding all of our eyes. And then I wanted to hang up that satellite phone and call for the pickup to get me out of there. I wanted to change this pair of underwear. I wanted to shower. I wanted a proper meal, right? But I realized that Captain Lou was just 2.5 or 3 days behind me at that point. And he was going to become the second person to do this incredible thing and complete this crossing. And out of 7 billion people, he's the only other person on the planet that fully understands what we've been to. And so to honor him with gratitude and respect for his incredible accomplishment as well, I elected not to call the plane and instead wait for him so that I could celebrate with him. Once he arrives, we were able to congratulate him. I finally took about a week or so to complex logistics to get us off the Antarctica's ice. We got picked up together, taken back to this base called Union Glacier on Antarctica, then awaited a plane and flown back to southern Chile in Punta Arenas, where I was reunited with Jenna, which was an incredible moment, of course, to run and jump into her arms. And she says to me, she's like, well, this has been amazing. Congratulations, Colin. You know, we did it. You must be so excited to fly home to Portland tomorrow and sleep in your own bed. And it's going to be amazing. She goes, but we're not doing that. Instead, turns out the media has gotten a big hold of this story. So tomorrow, we're flying to Manhattan. You're going to be on the Today Show. Which, generally speaking, would be somewhat of a cool opportunity. When you've been alone in a tent for 2 months, completely by yourself, you're flown to New York City, you're on live television, it's a very disorienting feeling, to say the very least. But I was humbled by all the attention and curiosity around this. That was always the hope, to inspire others. And one question kept coming up in every interview that people started asking me. They would ask me a question, something like this. They would go, Colin, are you a superhuman? And it took me a second, but then my response became simple. I would say, yeah, I am a superhuman, but so are you. So are each and every one of us. Because it just depends on how any of us flex and develop this muscle right here, the 6 inches between our ears. Inevitably in life, we all know this. Life is hard. You inevitably face setbacks. Here I am, alone in my tent, crying, full of doubt, full of questions. Colin, should I give up? Is this even possible? Why me? We've all asked ourselves those questions before, right? But I've come to realize that only one question truly matters when facing great obstacles, for any of us. How will we respond? We all have a choice. Are you going to choose fear or love? Is this an insurmountable obstacle or a huge opportunity for growth? I'm sure of this. Achievement is not for the select few. Achievement is simply for those who never quit. It is for those who set goals. It is for those who put the most steps in front of the others. But more than anything, achievement is simply for those who can overcome the greatest obstacle of all, your own mind.
Amen.
And when you switch your mindset towards the positive, you will quickly realize that there is a reservoir of untapped potential waiting to be released. Masterpieces to be painted on the canvas of your choosing. My canvas just happens to be the mountaintops and the ends of the earth, and I don't blame you if you don't want to go out there by yourself and freeze your butt off. Totally fine. But we all have a masterpiece inside of us. Things we want to do, things we want to create. An answer to that question, what's your Everest? But as you sit there and you ask yourself that question right now, what's your Everest? It's easy to see the mountaintop being too far. The process being too hard. we overcomplicate it in our mind and we go, you know what, it's not even worth starting. But the process is more simple than you think, so I want to leave you with this. Set a goal. Take your first steps. The chair, it's right in front of you. And when your steps get you there, push the chair further. Make it to the next waypoint. As you go along your process, as you dare to engage the process of achieving greatly, you will find yourself alone in your proverbial tent with a storm raging on the outside, full of fear, full of doubt, wanting to give up. What then? Jenna's words. Put your boots back on. Step outside of the tent. Step outside of the comfort zone. Because that is where the profound growth happens. And lastly, I hate to admit this, but we all know this, unfortunately, that when we dare to dream greatly, people around us, sometimes people that love us dearly, might say to us, you know what? Your hopes, your dreams, your goals, they're impossible. It's not going to work. When that happens, remember this story, but more importantly, remember, you are strong, you are capable, you are possible. Thank you very much.